All right, welcome. My name is Joanna Troutman, and today we are going to make salmon cat food. This is my fastest cat food recipe, so if you're a little bit short on time or you're intimidated by the amount of time that it takes to make, say, chicken cat food or turkey cat food, this may be a great starting point. It's a little bit more expensive per meal because you're using salmon rather than chicken. But if you happen to catch salmon and it's inexpensive for you, then this may be the recipe for you. We are going to poach the salmon. So in light of that, I have my pan ready. I used a really good sized frying pan. And I'm going to turn my burner on to medium and put the lid on it because I want that water to get to a heavy simmer or a very light boil before I add my salmon. Now, for this recipe, I am using 1 pound of salmon, and this happens to be skin-on salmon. I did another video with a phone version, the up and down version. I used skinless fillets, again, 1 pound. For this one, we're gonna use skin on. That's what I was able to get when I filmed this one. And both will work. It depends on what you have available to you. All right, along with our 1 pound of salmon, we are going to use a 1/2 cup of ground flaxseed, and this is for just a little bit of fiber. A little bit of fiber is good for the cat's digestive system. It's also a great source of protein and some very healthy fats. We're going to use a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast. And that, if you are not familiar with it, is a wonderful source of protein and also fiber. Most nutritional yeast on the market is supplemented with B12 as well, which is good for your cats. And again, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe below, like the video. After we add our nutritional yeast, we're gonna add 2 eggs. For our 1 pound of salmon, I am going to add 2 eggs for some extra protein, as well as I'm using the shells for mineral purposes. I do, and my cats also, like a little bit of canned pumpkin. This is commercially canned pumpkin, and this is a 1/2 cup. Now, in the tiny containers, I have a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric. You can recognize it from its golden color. And if you look closely, you can see some specks of black pepper. This is a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric and just a dash of black pepper. It does not take much at all. In this recipe, it's not for flavor. It is, you add black pepper when you cook with turmeric because it allows the curcumin and the other flavonoids to basically bypass the liver so they don't get filtered out right away and they can get into the bloodstream and be helpful to the cat's body. This final white powder, for me it's a white powder, it is a taurine supplement. Taurine is an essential amino acid for cats. Salmon should have taurine in it. However, I feel safer supplementing with this. This is 2 grams of taurine. Excess taurine, if your cat does not need it, they go ahead and they excrete it through the urine. So a little bit extra is safer than too little. If there's too little, they run into a wide variety of health problems. Now, let's take a look and see how our water is coming. I'm starting to see the small bubbles. Small bubbles are good, but not quite where I need it. So, for cooking tools that I'm using today, I have my large frying pan. If you happen to have a poaching pan, use that. I'm poaching in my large frying pan. I'm also using a high-powered blender. Mine happens to be a Vitamix. This pitcher is also safe for hot food because we are going to be poaching this hot. I have a slotted spoon that I used with my pumpkin, but also it is used when we get the salmon out of the pan and into the blender. I also have a spatula, which you can see I already used as I was getting my pumpkin into my bowl. I used my spoon and my spatula. And then other than that, that is it. I am not pressure canning this particular recipe. I'll be storing it in the fridge because 1 pound of salmon along with these other ingredients makes enough food to feed one cat for 7 days. So if you're feeding your cat only this, you would take this recipe and divide it in 7, and that's enough for each day for your cat. That's roughly 200 calories per day. All right, we are starting to come to a simmer. So I'm going to go ahead and add my salmon. Now, if this salmon is not completely thawed, so it is going to have to poach for a little bit longer than it normally would if you have completely thawed salmon. So, oh, yeah, that's one. They weren't stuck together when I got them out of the container. Okay, I'm going to use my hands to carefully, there we go. So, safer with a spoon, but it is doable with fingers. I'm going to return the lid, then wash my hands after touching the salmon. In just a minute, I am going to set the timer for 4 minutes. When I was using the skinless salmon, I did a 4-minute timer, but it was too long. It really needed only 3 minutes. But this salmon, with the skin on and the fact that it was still slightly frozen, I think it's going to need that extra minute. If you look closely at the top of the pan, you can see that the salmon is beginning to cook around the edges, and also the water is definitely coming to a really steady simmer. So, poaching is one of the easiest ways to get into cooking, at least with something like salmon. We could have pan fried it, but I didn't want to add extra oil, and my cats do not care. Like, the advantage you get when you're doing something like pan frying or roasting or grilling salmon is it caramelizes on the outside, and to the human palate, because it actually, there's a sugar that's developed, it tastes very, very good. Well, cats can't taste that particular flavor, according to the research that I've read, so it's not really worth that added effort. Also, the seasonings that we humans tend to like on our salmon, with the extra salt and maybe dill or teriyaki seasoning, all of those are not cat friendly. So I'm keeping it very simple with poaching, and poaching in water, because I'm going to save that poaching water. That is going to be part of the recipe too. Now, while this is poaching, oh my goodness, I did it for 4 hours. So let's see. Okay, now we have an actual timer that's going for 3 minutes. Okay, let's get our ingredients in our blender, because that's, after we cook the salmon, that's going to be the next step. When you're loading a blender and you have frozen food, your frozen food always goes in the bottom. If you have ice, that goes in the very bottom. We're not using ice. We are using frozen vegetables. So, in they go. And again, this is a mix of green beans, carrots, and corn and peas. These are all safe for cats in small quantities, and my cats happen to like them. There are other vegetables that you can use. This is what my cats like. Next, I'm going to go ahead and do my 2 whole eggs. I am using a high-powered blender, and that gets the shells into tiny enough pieces that it's not gonna cut up their esophagus on the way down. I keep the shells in for added calcium. If you do not have a super high-powered blender and you're afraid that the shells are not going to get small enough, go ahead and just add the inside of the eggs, and then bake your shells separately and use a coffee grinder to grind them up and then add them later. That's perfectly fine. All right, so the other ingredients that you're going to add in, I'm going to add my 1/2 cup of ground flaxseed. Remember, always use, ground flaxseed, not the whole seed. Your cats cannot in any way digest the whole seed, and it can be very harmful to them. But the ground, it releases the nutrients so that it actually can move through the digestive system and be absorbed. It's actually very similar to humans in that particular way. All right, half cup of ground flaxseed, quarter cup of nutritional yeast, and I will go ahead and add a quarter teaspoon of turmeric along with the dash of pepper, and then the taurine supplement. And finally, for this step, I'm going to go ahead and add my pumpkin, seeing as that's almost liquid and it is not frozen. And I have 30 seconds left on my timer, but I'm going to go ahead and check. Now, I am not poaching for human standards. What I want is cooked. That side's cooked, but let me get to the thick part. Not quite cooked right there. So I'm going to let that go for a little bit longer. So our final step with the actual cooking or heating process is going to be to let this salmon complete the cooking process. Then we are going to add the salmon meat into the blender and then pour the cooking water on top of everything. So again, if your blender pitcher or food processor pitcher cannot handle hot food, you're gonna have to let everything cool off a little bit before you do the blending. But this particular pitcher, the Vitamix pitcher, is designed to handle hot liquid. So you could use it if you were pureeing soup. In this case, we're making salmon cat food pate, or I should say pate style salmon cat food. All right, my timer is done. Since only my thickest part of my salmon meat needed a little bit more cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and turn my fan off. I have to use the exhaust fan because I am cooking with natural gas. Lid off. We have poached salmon. I'm going to use the skin as well because I'm gonna be blending everything up. And the blending process allows the skin to become easier to digest. All right, let me bring my pitcher closer. So 1 fillet in, 2 fillets, 3 fillets, and then for me the tricky part is going to be pouring this heavy thing. You could use a bowl to scoop it, I suppose, but now with the cooking liquid, it more than covers my food. I see one little fleck of salmon. I don't want to miss any of it. My cats would be so sad. All right, our pan is empty. Here is our pitcher ready for the blender. My blender is plugged in, but it is not yet powered on. I'm going to go ahead and add the lid. Now, turning my Vitamix on. If your blender uses a tamper like the Vitamix, I would go ahead and insert it now. Otherwise, make sure your lid is secure. Lid is secure. I'm going to take this up to a relatively high speed to make sure that those eggshells get extremely tiny. But you start at a lower speed and work your way up. So let's see what we can do. Here we go. All right, I can look in at the side and I can see any particles that I can see are extremely tiny. And at this point, your cat food is ready. The egg, though it was raw, Once you blend it up completely in with the other food, it heats it up, and that egg is then cooked through that process. And this food, once cooled, is ready to be served. Now, I am going to store this in glass jars in my fridge because it's going to be eaten in the next couple of days. This is absolutely freezable, but you want to let it cool before you put it in any plastic baggies. It'll just go burn right through the baggies at this temperature. Personally, I'm going to be storing it in glass jars, much like this one. Again, this is similar to the way I can it in this size as well, but this is not pressure canned. This is just for storage in the fridge, and I choose to store it in the glass jars because it doesn't, the glass does not absorb the odor, and this helps keep the food stay fresh a little bit longer. But again, this is salmon cat food. It was ready in less than 15 minutes. It is very fast as compared to some of the other recipes, very nutritious. And my cats love it. They love it. I'm keeping it as kind of a little treat to mix in every once, mix in with the chicken. If you're on a budget, this will definitely be a treat food, but if you're more interested in something that's fast, or if you have a super picky cat, this may work really well for you. Thank you for watching. Let me know how it goes in the comments. You know I read those and get back to as many of you as I can. And thank you.